For the anterior drawer test, I'm going to go ahead and bring the patient's arm out here. I'm going to stabilize up here and apply a force. Grab the humerus and apply a force anteriorly. And that's for the anterior drawer test. And then for the posterior drawer test, same position, I'm going to stabilize up here and then apply a force posteriorly through the humerus. For the apprehension crank test, I'm going to bring the patient's arm out to 90, and then I'm just going to externally rotate the arm until it brings on their symptoms. And then for the relocation test, same thing, but I'm going to kind of stabilize the humeral head up here with this arm, and then externally rotate the arm. And it should take away their pain or pop that humerus back into place. And then for the surprise test, you're going to be in the same position for relocation, but you're just going to let go. For the posterior apprehension test, I'm going to go ahead and bring the patient's arm up like this, and I'm going to internally rotate and adduct the arm at the same time while applying the force across the body like this. For the load and shift test, I'm going to have the patient sit up. So for load and shift, I'm going to go ahead and stabilize up here, and then I'm going to apply a force through the humerus anteriorly and then posteriorly. For the jerk test, I'm going to go ahead and bring the patient's arm up to 90, internally rotate the arm, and I'm going to stabilize the scapula and apply a force and actually load it and then bring it across your body. And then for the sulcus test, I'm going to go right off the acromion, feel for that space there, and apply an inferior force on the humerus here. And I'm looking for any gapping going on. For the Hawkins-Kennedy test, you're going to have your patient sitting, you're going to bring them into 90 degrees of flexion, and then you're going to end up internally rotating the arm. For the internal rotation resistance strength test, you're going to bring the patient arm out to 90 degrees, and you're going to apply a force onto their arm so they go into internal and external rotation. So can you resist? And then same thing, can you resist? Okay. And then for the near impingement sign, you're going to have your patient sitting. You're going to externally rotate the arm and bring them into, they're going to bring their arm up into full abduction. So as high up as they can go. And then you're going to do the same thing, but with internal rotation. For the supine impingement test, you're going to have your patient laying down. You're going to bring their arm into external rotation and then fully abduct the arm. So you're going to have it fully abducted in external rotation, and then you're going to internally rotate their arm. For the posterior internal impingement test, you're going to bring their arm out to 90 degrees of adduction, a little bit of extension, and then you're just going to externally rotate their arm. For the O'Brien test, you're going to have the patient sitting, you're going to bring their arm into 90 degrees of flexion, and they're going to start with their thumb down, and I'm just going to apply the force and they resist. And then we're going to do the same thing, but an external rotation, so palm up and apply a force. For the anterior slide test, I'm going to have the patient sit like this, so thumbs on their back, and I'm just going to apply an anterior and superior force. For the Kim test, I'm going to have the patient bring their arm up to 90, internally rotate, and I'm going to actually load the humerus. And then I'm going to go ahead and have the patient lie down. And for the biceps load 1 test, you're going to bring their arm out to 90 degrees, abduction, supinate the forearm, and have them resist me pulling them into elbow extension. And then for the bicep load 2 test, you're just gonna move the arm up to 120 degrees of abduction. Same thing, arms supinated, and they resist me pulling them into elbow extension. For the clump test, I'm gonna put my fist underneath their shoulder here, and I'm gonna be externally rotating the arm while applying a posterior force, just so I can bring that shoulder over my fist. For the lateral crank test, you're gonna bring the arm up into 90, axially load the humerus, and I'm just gonna bring the arm in and out of external rotation. For the resisted supination external rotation test, I'm gonna go ahead and bring their arm out to 90, and they're gonna try to supinate their forearm, but I'm gonna resist them doing that while I bring them into external rotation. Okay, so go ahead. For the AC crossover test, I'm going to bring the patient's arm up into 90, and we're simply going to go ahead and cross that arm over into abduction, horizontal abduction. For the AC shear test, I'm basically going to be cupping her deltoids. So this one will be in the posterior aspect, and this one will be over the anterior or like a mid clavicle. And I'm just going to apply a force through both arms here to create a shear. For the Paxino sign, I'm going to basically be pinching. So my thumb will be on the acromion, and these two fingers will be on the mid-clavicle. I'm just going to pinch to create a shear there. For the ER lag sign, I'm going to go ahead and bring the patient's arm up and then slightly in some internal rotation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly release my hand, and they're supposed to hold it in place there. Okay. And for internal rotation lag sign, I'm going to have the patient sit over there for me, please. And I'm going to bring the patient's arm up behind their back and just their hand slightly off of their back here. And I'm going to slowly release my hand, and they're supposed to hold it in place there. Okay, and then you can sit back over here. For the horn blower sign, I'm going to bring the patient's arm up into 90 degrees of scaption, and they're going to resist me applying a force, so they're supposed to be externally rotating their arm. Okay, and then for the belly press test, I'm going to place my hand, the back of my hand on their belly, slide it over here, and they're going to place their hand on top of mine, and they're going to keep their arm very stiff in this position. They're just going to be placing or pressing their hand into mine. So go ahead and press your hand into mine and relax. For the drop arm test, I'm going to bring the patient's arm out into 90 degrees of abduction, and I'm going to go ahead and slowly release my hand away, so they're supposed to hold their arm out. Okay, and then can you slowly lower your arm? Okay, and then for the dropping sign test, you're going to keep their arm on their side, flex the elbow, and I'm just going to apply a force resisting them into external rotation. So go ahead and hold and relax. For the speeds test, we're going to bring the patient's arm out to 90 degrees of flexion, and we're going to start them out in pronation, and I'm going to apply a force, and they hold. Ready? Hold it. And then we're going to supinate the arm and do the same thing. Apply a force, and they hold it. Hold it. Okay. And then for the Jurgensen's test, we're going to have the patient's arm at their side here, and they're going to try to supinate their arm and bring it out like this while I'm applying a resistance. And again, I'm going to be palpating for that long head tendon up here while she's doing that. So So go ahead and try to bring your arm out. So for a posterior glide, to increase flexion, I'll hold the patient's arm like this. I'm going to place this hand around the joint space here, and I'm going to apply a posterior force. And also posterior lateral force, so I'm going to go down and out. For a lateral glide, I'm going to be in the same position, except I'm going to place this hand up in the axilla, and I'm just going to rotate my body. For an inferior glide, to improve abduction, I'm going to place this hand up top here while her arm is already abducted, and apply a force down inferiorly. And then for a quadrant grade 2, row the boat, I'm going to bring the patient's arm up until like where you feel some resistance, and I'm just going to bring her forearm onto my belly. And then for a quadrant grade 3, flop the fish, we can apply a towel underneath the shoulder here. And this is all going to be motion in my wrists here.